is not a specific directive, a specific mitzvah, but rather a lesson that's to be implied. When the Torah gives you a directive, that's a mitzvah. When the Torah gives you an implication, that's called not a specific requirement, but a fulfillment of something. I'm confused. Okay. Basically, here's the way it goes. If there's a mitzvah to do something and you do it, you get a mitzvah. If there's no specific mitzvah to do it, but there's an implication that you ought to do it, and you do it, you get a mitzvah. Also, this is what we call obligatory mitzvahs and fulfilling mitzvahs. An obligation is you got to do it, and once you do it, you get the mitzvah. Not an obligation, but a fulfillment means that it's implied, it ought to be done. It's not a directive, but you should do it. And if you do, you get a mitzvah. Does that make it easier? Okay. Tzitzis. Fringe benefits, right? Okay. The Jewish teaching. Right? Okay. The mitzvah to wear tzitzis for men is only on a garment that has 4 corners. Now, my garment over here looks like it has a corner. It's not really, is it? If you look a little closer, it's more of a round thing. So it's not a garment that needs tzitzis.
But your back part.
Yeah, but I need 4. Yeah, but then I cut all the way up. Cut all the way up. Right. I've got 1 back, 2 back here, but these 2 over here, which would have been good enough, didn't qualify. So if I don't wear a 4-cornered garment, do I have to wear tzitzis? No. It's not an obligatory mitzvah, it is a fulfilling mitzvah. But if I do go out of my way to what? To purchase a garment with 4 corners, particularly and purposefully, so that I can do this, then I get a mitzvah called tzitzis. You understand? I might add that even though tzitzis may be an option, and it may sound like an option, in fact, it is a whole lot more than that. Because in fact, rabbis say that a man who does not walk with tzitzis is walking without Hashem and company. You get accompanied by Hashem with this. So again, let's understand that Shabbos Kiddush on Shabbat is an obligation. Kiddush on a Chag, on a holiday, is not an obligation. It's an implication, and therefore, if you do it, you get a mitzvah. How about a Friday night comes out? How about a holiday comes out a Friday night? What do you do then?
Shabbat Yom Tov.
Right, you say Shabbat Yom Tov, right? But what do? You're getting a mitzvah of the Torah, both as an obligation with Shabbat and as an implication for the holiday. You understand? Okay, good. The appointed days, the appointed festivals, and the specific dates are that Kiddush. Now, it starts off in verse 3 with the very first, most important of all holidays. Anyone tell me what that is? Take a look. Shabbos. Right there, right in front of your face, right? Shabbos. So that means that whatever other holidays I have are going to come forth here, they have to follow the Shabbat mode. And the Shabbat mode is a restriction of labors. So basically, the 39 forbidden labors of Shabbat will be the same 39 forbidden labors of the holiday, except as you well know, the 3 exceptions, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But let's understand now that 6 days you shall work, 7 days Shabbat. Once again, it says holy convocation, which really means holy declaration, correct? Don't do any work. So you've got 2 mitzvahs, a positive and a negative. What's the negative? Don't do any work. What's the positive? Do the kiddush. Well, is everyone following me? I'm doing it too fast.
Is it negative because you're not supposed to do it?
Yeah, don't do this. That's a negative. Don't do. That's don't, right? There's do's and there's don'ts. That's really simple, right? We Jews are loaded with do's and don'ts. Okay. So therefore, in all your dwelling places, what does that last part of the verse 3? In all your dwelling places mean? Anybody? The Chol Moshvotechem. What does it mean?
In all the areas where you live.
That's right. Whether you live in Israel, don't live in Israel, doesn't make a difference, right? Point is that you have to have a sense of obligation with Shabbat, wherever it may be. We also said that Shabbat is not designated to a date; it's designated to the counting of days, right? Because Shabbat does not have any history except for creation. Because the Shabbat actually does what we call a historic recollection of creation, you might argue that therefore creation was for everybody, maybe non-Jews should keep Shabbat as well. We learned from here that Shabbat is in fact only for Jews, and that is because the restrictions are so overwhelming that non-Jews couldn't possibly master it. It'd be too overwhelming for the non-Jew to do. Okay, any event, we have Shabbat as our first of holidays. Anyone want to take a look at verse 4? And verse 4 actually, once again, is a repeat of the appointed festivals. The appointed festivals are Hashem, holy convocations, holy declarations, which you shall designate in their appropriate time. Each holiday in a different moment, correct? Different date. Verse 4, if you're trying to memorize it, is the one-line statement for Kiddush on holidays in the daytime. That's your one-verse daytime Kiddush on holidays. And you should know it. The appointed festivals of Hashem, the Kodesh, holy declarations, and have to be called at the right time. Let's go to the first one. Verse 5. The very first holiday is designated once again by a date. Gotta have that time. It's a moed. It's a moed, the proper time. And that begins in the first month of the year. Everybody know the first month is named is Nisan. It's right when the world began and when the year began, but Nisan is the first month. That confuses even more. And it's so confusing. You, I mean, wouldn't you imagine such a what a religion? It doesn't have its first month it doesn't even begin the year. I mean, give me a break. How goofy can you get? The answer is, I guess you're right. We are goofy, except for to remember that Nisan, the world wasn't created in Nisan, so the world does get a year older in Tishrei, but Nisan's special for the Jewish people. And you got to really feel that sense of the special designation of Nisan as the first month in significance and importance. And if you're counting months, you count from Nisan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and on. Whereas the year begins, as I said again, from Tishrei. Okay, and the first month, what date do we start the Pesach? Anybody? Doesn't say that. What does it say? It says the 14th. Remember I said that earlier? Because you can't do, even though we left Mitzrayim on the 15th, but we have to have a carbon Pesach. You can't have a carbon in the night. We're going to celebrate the night because all our celebrations begin at night. All our days begin at night. So on the 15th, we're going to have the Seder in the evening after it gets dark. But late in the afternoon, just before, what do we have to do? We have to slaughter and bring the Passover sacrifice. So the 14th of the month is Pesach to Hashem. Anybody can tell me the time of the day, as in verse 5? Afternoon is right, late afternoon. And it says Pesach offering to Hashem. Doesn't mean the Pesach holiday is in there. And remember, Pesach is used to designate two things. One, the holiday, the Pesach holiday, and the other, to designate the Passover sacrifice, the Pesach sacrifice. So this, when it says here Pesach to Hashem, it says Pesach offering to Hashem. You see that? Funny thing about that Pesach offering thing is that it doesn't say the word offering in the Chumash in Hebrew. Which means the translator took a liberty of sticking it in based upon the commentary. And which once again teaches us that just because something is called Pesach doesn't mean it's the holiday. There's the holiday of Pesach and there's the sacrifice of Pesach. The holiday does not begin on the 14th. The sacrifice is done on the 14th. But the next passage, on the 15th of this month, that is, as soon as nightfall hits, is the festival of Matzot. Now the festival begins. Before there was no festival. We did the sacrifice, but no festival. No restriction of work. Now to restriction of work at the 15th of night, and it's the festival of Matzot. Why does God call it the festival of Pesach? Why did he change the name to Matzot?
Because that's the spiritual liberation.
What about Pesach? Pesach was the liberation, bringing sacrifice in the eyes of the Egyptians and not letting them know that, and sacrificing their God. Yes?
So one explanation that I heard was Hashem calling it the festival of Moses is because that was the command that he had given the Jews. But the Jews refer to it as the festival of Pesach because of the miracle that ended up happening.
All right, so you're saying well. Just refine it just a bit. What basically occurs is that Hashem refers to the holiday based upon what we did. We refer to the holiday based upon what he did. God passed over the homes of the Jews, Pesach, therefore we call it Pesach. Thank you, Hashem, for saving our firstborn. We, on the other hand, heroically ate matzahs on the way out because we didn't want to wait, because God commanded us to leave. And that was the heroism on our part. There wasn't much else to eat. God says, my beautiful Jewish people are heroic. Follow me into the desert without food and water except for matzahs. We'll call it the festival of matzahs. Basically what you just said. Okay, it's a festival of matzahs to Hashem. What do you mean to Hashem? Anybody? Anybody thinking? What's the mean the festival of holidays to Hashem? When you say, duh, is it to Hashem? What am I doing this for? The answer is sometimes people do have ulterior motives. I like matzah. It's cute. I like this. I like that. Do it for Hashem. Not because you like it. You like it as extra dividend. But that's not the key. Key is not because. Key is because this is a commandment of Hashem. You shall eat matzah for 7 days. 7 days is how it's going to last. Did you see that on verse 6? Because we all know outside of Israel becomes 8. We're talking about 7 days of Pesach. 7 days is matzah Sunday. Whoa. Eating matzah 7 days. Now, you're really not obligated to eat matzah 7 days. You're only obligated to eat matzah when? First night. That's it. Or on outside of Israel, the second night. The rest of the holiday, you're not obligated to eat matzahs. But you also cannot eat comments. So if I'm interested in bread, I'm stuck with matzahs. But here's another example of a mitzvah that you're not obligated to do, but if you do it, you get a mitzvah anyway. You're not obligated to eat matzahs throughout the entire 7 days, but if you do, you get a mitzvah. It's a wonderful thing. Eat more matzahs. Now, this holiday of 7 days, which began on the 15th of Nisan, it says on the first day, it's a holy convocation. That's what it says again. A holy declaration. That means you got to make Kiddush. That means the first day, if you're making Kiddush on a positive level, what's the negative? What's the negative? No work. That's it. So therefore, that applies to that 15th. Doesn't apply to the rest of the days. No. Obviously, therefore, we learn that the 7-day yontif is only 1 day of no work. This is a very important lesson to learn. We haven't learned this
not work is a positive.
But in practicality, it's what you cannot do. Do's and don'ts. Don't. So therefore, now that you have this obligation to make kiddush and this prohibition of work, let's see what it says over here. Let's read verse 7 together. Everybody read with me. On the first day there shall be a holy convocation, make kiddush. You shall do no laborious work. What word is extra here? Anybody? Come on, say it. Anna, say it. That's right. Come on, think. laborious. Work is work. What's laborious? You can't take 100 pounds of stone, of rocks in a bag and climb the Empire State Building. How many 3 stories in New York City? Okay. That's laborious work. But to take a hanky in my pocket and to walk out there with no air, what's wrong with that? So we know that it is wrong. So what are we saying? There's 2 kinds of work. There's laborious and there's work. General work is 39 categories. We all know you can't carry a hanky on Shabbos day. But if you're inside a building, let's say it's a small building, a little 5 stories. New Yorkers, 20-story building is small, right? So it's 5 stories, this building, right? You got 100 pounds to carry, and you go up and down the stairs just because you're crazy.
You're getting targeted.
You get your cardio. Is that forbidden on Shabbos? No, because you're indoors. But if you take a hanky and you walk outside, that's forbidden, right?
But it said that everyone is the same.
Right. So let's say there's no Erev. No Erev, you can't carry that hanky. 100 pounds is okay. Gives you an understanding of what the 39 forbidden labors are. They are issues that the Torah dealt with as those that were done in the construction of the sanctuary. And therefore, since the sanctuary does not override Shabbat, on Shabbat you can't do those 39. We learned this 100 times. So, what does laborious mean? Laborious means that on this holiday, even though all 39 are forbidden, we're going to allow you 3 of them. Because those 3 are not laborious. You know why they're not? Because it's going to contribute to the joy of the day. And what are those 3? That will contribute to the joy of the day. Cooking, carrying, and for, let's say I want to go bring a bottle of wine for Shabbat or for holiday, whatever. And the third one is transferring fire, right? So what does this teach you? This teaches you that on a holiday, you're forbidden laborious labor, but you are permitted there for the other 3. Everyone understand that? That's how we know this, from this particular verse. And it's important for you to understand our rules and regulations based upon what we see from each and every word. On Shabbat, all work's forbidden. Story's over. On holidays, if something will bring you greater joy, and it's not that laborious. No, I'm not saying anything. Some women love to cook. I really love to cook. But if you love to cook, you can cook. If you don't love to cook, you cook anyway. Point is that you're allowed this extra joy of Yom. That's what he's trying to say. Now, this holiday Pesach has this ruling that you can do these extra 3 things. This is going to serve as an example for the other holidays as well, which we will learn about in just a moment. Okay, so therefore, on the first day, it is forbidden to go to work, or you can do those other 3 things that we said. As a special sacrifice, that will be a fire offering for Hashem in the Beit HaMikdash. And wait a second, what does the very end of verse 8 teach us about this holiday? Come by. The very end of verse 8 teaches us what? It ends with a holy day. The 7th day is holy. So basically, here's the structure of Pesach. Structure of Pesach is 1, 6, 1. Everyone understand? 1 day of holiday, 6 days of Chol HaMoed, and 1 day of holiday. We'll call the holiday a Moed. We'll call the holiday a Chag. We'll also call the holiday a Yom Tov. Everyone familiar with these terms? Everyone's familiar? Good. The middle days are days that you have to still eat matzah, and you get a mitzvah for the matzah and no chametz. You can go to work. What are those middle days called? Chol HaMoed. It's chol, it's a weekday, not a holiday, but it's also still part of the moed. Still part of the moed. Everyone understand? Okay. How does this change outside of Israel? It changes in the following manner. You have to know this. The first day becomes the second day of holiday, of Chag. taking away one of the Chol HaMoed days. So it becomes 2 days Chag, 4 days Chol HaMoed, and then the 7th day is doubled. And there's 2 days Chag at the end. 161 became 242. Everyone understand? Okay. Now, this is Pesach. And we learned so many wonderful things about Pesach here. We learned about the specialness of Nisan. We learned that it's a designated moment. We learned about the Korban on the 14th, the holiday setting in on the 15th, and the mitzvah of matzis, and of course that the structure of the holiday is 161 from the Torah and the 242 outside of Israel. And the story continues. Verse 9, God says to Moshe, verse 10, speak to the Jewish people and tell them the following. You're going to come there to Israel, the land that I give you, and you'll reap the harvest. And when you reap the harvest, you shall take an omer. An omer means the word measurement. You know what omer means? You're going to take a measurement. And this measurement will come from the harvest. Correct? And this measurement is a special measurement, which you're going to bring from your first harvest, turn the page to the Kohen in the Beit HaMikdash. And you'll bring this omer, and you'll, in a way, thank Hashem for your food, for your grain. You'll bring this measurement of grain and say, thank you, Hashem, for this beautiful harvest. And I offer a bit of it to you. That's called the omer. Now, it doesn't say anything about cooking, about counting just yet, does it? So we'll have to just wait till we wait on that one. But let's see what it says. Now, this is stuff that none of us know about because it doesn't happen anymore these days because there's no Beit HaMikdash. But in the Beit HaMikdash, the Kohen would wave the omer, would wave it, right? Before Hashem, gain favor for you. Hashem will be so delighted that you have acknowledged his gift. On the morrow of the rest day, the Kohen shall wave it. What does the morrow of the rest day mean? Day after what? Which rest day? You say Shabbat. And most commentaries would say that, and it doesn't mean that at all. It means on a specific rest day, not Shabbat. It means on the rest day of a holiday. Which holiday? Pesach. It's the day after Pesach. On the morrow of the rest day. On the day after the Pesach. On the day after the Pesach, you will then bring it to the Kohen to wait. That means we sacrifice the sacrifice on the 14th in the afternoon. That night on the 15th, we have the Seder. The next morning, we celebrated the holiday. And on the very next day, when Chol HaMoed began, what did we do? We brought the measurement of grain. And the Kohen waited. And that began the period of time called, say it louder, the omer. Period of time. Thank you for the grains. Okay. On the day you wave the omer, you perform the service of an unblemished lamb in its first year as an elevation offering to Hashem. You bring a sacrifice. Then there's a meal offering as well, 2 ephah of flour mixed with oil, fire offering to Hashem, a satisfying aroma, a libation of wine, and so forth. Look what 14 says. You're not permitted to eat any bread or roasted kernels or plum kernels until this very day. That means you're not allowed to eat any bread or any grains. And of course, if it's not bread, it's matzah, it's a holiday. You're not allowed to eat any of that until you bring this. This ceremony of the omer. So when is this prohibition set in of this prohibition of grains? From when can we eat bread? The answer is 6 months ago, Rosh Hashanah. 6 months ago, Rosh Hashanah began a prohibition of eating any breads or grains that come from the new harvest. For the old harvest, you can eat. but for the new harvest cannot be eaten until the day after Pesach, when the Omer was brought. Now, many argue that this rule doesn't apply anymore, because after all, there's no sacrifice to the Omer, and there's no point waiting in the base of English. So why can't I eat the new grains before? The idea was that the ceremony of the waving would permit me to eat the new grains. But if I haven't got the ceremony, I haven't got the base of English for the point to wave it, so when do I get a chance to eat the new grains? So some want to say that without that offering, the very essence of the next day after Pesach doesn't. So you can start eating new grains as of the day after the Seder. However, it's even though it's given to dispute, our prevalent custom nowadays is to be careful not to eat from the new grains. And you can check that out with your local bakery. You go to the bakery and you'll ask them, is this from new grains or old grains? And they'll tell you. If it's from new grains, because those are the people, they're selling to people who are not that careful with this rule. If they're telling you old grains, but you're more careful with the rule. Why is this rule subject to your choice? Because it doesn't really apply anymore if there's no sacrifice and there's no waving ceremony. So if you want to be strict and do it anyway, it's a beautiful thing. Many are. Many bakeries are. There are bakeries that will sell only old grains, for that matter. And this concept of selling of the new grains and so forth, if we are to do it, we ought to be extra strict and real shomer, and really religious, maybe more than even the law requires. Then we are doing this law midrabbanan, a rabbinic. Everyone understand? That even though the Torah doesn't require it anymore, but the Rabbanan do. Why would the Rabbanan do that? What's the purpose? The answer is Zecher L'Mikdash. Remember the way it used to be in the base of Mikdash. And because we want you to remember that, because someday Mashiach's coming, and when he comes, we'll have to do this again. We'll have the same ceremony in the base of Mikdash, the way the grains are going to be beautiful. But we won't know anything about it if we never learn it, and we don't try to observe it. So therefore, if you're not up to it just yet, okay, you don't have to be so strict. But if you are, and your bakery offers it anyway, why not? Gives you a consciousness and a hope for the restoration of this beautiful service. And so that's why we have this rule in effect even today. Yes.
Does this apply to grains stock or just grains that were grown in Israel?
Oh, so that's another question. Some say it only applies after Shvat. And therefore, another reason why to be legal outside of Israel. And again, that point being taken, those that want to be more strict certainly should do so, and certainly get a bracha for it, blessing from Hashem. Those that don't feel they're up to it just yet. But then again, if your bakery is selling it, why not? Then you got a mitzvah without even trying. Yeah.
I have two questions that both circle around both of these issues.
Okay.
You've raised. The Pesach, the killing of the lamb was on the day before Pesach.
Correct. We have to do.
The fast of the firstborn
Same day.
male is also on that same
Same
day.
day.
How is it that if the Jews knew we were going to leave and we had to do both of these, that we had to hurry up and just make matzah when we had at least a full day to have made the bread?
Correct. And I think the idea was basically to eat matzah as an unleavened bread, not otherwise, simply to emphasize the point of what's called chipazon. What's chipazon? Make haste, get out. No strategies. The point of matzah was simply realize the time has come. And in fact, when you talk about that, what you're saying basically is, you're waiting all this long, all this, waiting all this time for you to enjoy this liberation, this great moment. Oh, I forgot my sunrise. I'll be right back. There's no time for sunrise. Get out. That's the idea of eating.
Some matzah was the common bread of.
No, not at all.
Was not.
But most commentators claim that matzah was never eaten in Mitzrayim, ever.
Okay, the second question. Mankind, all mankind, does not survive well without water.
Correct.
So when we left, what did we do for water?
So,
And what did we do for 40 years without water?
Smack the rocks.
get a few rocks. Get a few rocks.
And he was misspeaking.
Let me tell you a little bit about hitting a rock. Okay?
That's
Hitting a rock.
Ryan.
Let me tell you a little bit about hitting a rock for water. Right? Oh, thirsty. You want water? Have no fear. The fearless leader is here. Bang! Whoa, water! Everyone's quite excited. Okay, now tomorrow, I'll be ready to do the same for you. If you want.
What?
Boom! I'll be ready to do the same. Every day I just go up there and bang. I'll teach you how to do the trick yourself. I mean, listen, I'm a short day. I'm a busy day. So you do the trick, you do it for me. I mean, and then you pass it on to the other busy, you know? And everyone, it's no big deal. Why is it no big deal? First time. Why is that so? Very simple. I'm out in the park playing baseball. And I go through a first. So I walk over to this thing called a water fountain. I press this button. Whoa, water! You get it? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's a phenomenon. We expect that. We take it for granted. But it's a phenomenon. Water came out of a rock. Water comes out of this little machine over here. That's the whole idea. Anyway, let me go further because we got to now start the new mitzvah. Mitzvah number 15. Mitzvah of counting the Omer. Everyone counting? Who can tell me what today is? Oh, very good. Today is the 29th day of the Omer, which is 4 weeks and 1 day. How are you supposed to count? Weeks and days. Let's find out why. Take a look. You shall count for yourselves, verse 15, from the morrow of the rest day. What's the morrow of the rest day? We just said a moment ago. Day after Pesach. Very good. Until the day when you shall bring the Omer of the waving. Oh no, from the day. In other words, on the very same day that you brought that Omer of the waving, right? You also started to count. How long did you count, everybody? What does it say? I gotta look at the Chumash. I'm not reading for you. What? Shavuot, 7 weeks. It shall be Kanimo, complete. Now, this mitzvah of completeness, right? This mitzvah of completeness is a very interesting mitzvah. Let me explain what complete means. Complete means a complete day. To explain what a complete day means, you have to realize, generally speaking, our day goes from sunrise to sunset. Am I correct? Sunrise to sunset.
Yeah, not the Jewish day.
No, every day is sunrise to sunset. The day's over at sunset, isn't it? Isn't it? Can you document it at the sunset? No. Can you do work on Friday at the sunset? No. The day's over. The day began at sunrise. The sunset.
No, they began.
At sunrise. Well, okay, let me phrase it then. I'm sorry. Daylight, let's say daylight begins sunrise to sunset, and nighttime is stars out to rise of the dawn. You got that so far? Okay. But at nighttime, at the end of the day, at sunset, right? The night doesn't begin till the stars come out. Now you all agree that the period of time that elapses between the time of sunset and the time the stars come out. Is that true? And that's basically about 42 minutes. So during those 42 minutes, it's neither day nor night. So if you've got a day mitzvah to do, you better get it done before the sun set. If you've got a night mitzvah to do, you better do it after stars out. So 42 minutes, what am I gonna do? I'm bored. Open up the Chumash, learn some Torah. Do something worthwhile in your life. Or you can watch TV for an idiot. Whatever you want to do. But the 42 minutes, you can't do a day mitzvah, you can't do a night mitzvah. You get it? Okay. Now, stars come out. There's a night mitzvah called Adamari. There's a night mitzvah called Light Your Chanukah candles. There's a night mitzvah called Search for Chametz, whatever the day may be. It's kind of, Pesach, whatever it is. On that time, can you start searching for your chametz before the stars come out? The answer is no. This is not like them. Can you light your Hanukkah candles before the stars come out? The answer is no. Because you have to wait until the stars come out. It's a night mitzvah. Hanukkah candles is a night mitzvah.
Unless it's chocolate.
Okay, let's check. Let's not get totally confused. Okay, so now, in the morning, the rise of the dawn. Is there a difference in time between the rise of the dawn and sunrise? How much? Maybe 72 minutes. 72 minutes. And during that 72-minute period of time, I'm in no man's land again. Can't do a night mitzvah, can't do a day mitzvah. If I haven't delayed my Ma'ariv, I can't delay it beyond the rise of the dawn. On the other hand, I can't start my shacharit until sunrise. And that's the optimum way for Jewish observance. However, there are exceptions to the rule. One rule would be Shabbat. On Shabbat, for instance, Friday would end at sunset. But Shabbat will begin at sunset as well. In fact, Shabbat will begin 18 minutes before that. What I'm going to do at Shabbat is I'm going to add to it because I don't want to play games with those 42 minutes. I don't know. It's day, is it night? Who knows what? Could be, maybe. Shabbat too serious. I can't start Shabbat any later than sunset. On the other hand, the next night, Shabbat is over. I say to myself, okay, sunset. It's the lighthouse, you know, no, dusk. Okay, say Shabbos is over? The answer is no, because again, Shabbos is, you can't afford to play with that. So you wait until the next 42 minutes elapses, and then you have your chance to make Havdalah. The point is that realizing that this period of time, we are told that in general, if you want to accept nightfall, let's say at sunset, and maybe say an early Ma'ariv, which would require a recital of the Shema of the Ma'ariv later on if it gets dark, you can do that. However, you can't do that on Shavuot. You can't do that at the end of the Omer. At the end of the Omer, it has to be complete. What does complete mean? That the Omer is completely over for Shavuot to begin. So of course Pesach connects with Shavuot real easy. Pesach, first day of Omer, Shavuot, the last day of Omer, 49 in between, 49 days, 7 weeks. But the Omer must start at the beginning of the day, of its first day, and end at the very end of its last day, to be what the Torah requires to be complete. Verse 14. That's a big difference. It's the rest of the Torah straight away. You've got to be complete. And so, if that's so, when would I start the counting of the Omer? At the beginning of the first day. I know. That's what we always count at night. On the other hand, when would I end the Omer? On the last day, before the holiday of Shavuot is concerned? At nightfall. Not at sunset, but at nightfall. So that at nightfall, even though the holiday of Shavuot has already begun, I must keep Omer all the way till nightfall and daven a late Ma'ariv just in case to be sure that the Omer is completely over. And that's why it says in verse 14, it should be complete. And then it says in verse 16, this shall be until. Until means what? Conclusion of the Omer. The morrow of the seventh day, of the seventh week. The morrow of the seventh week is Shavuot. The morrow of the seventh week. the day after the 7th week is completed, which is a total of how many days? 50. Why does it say 50? Taka says 50. The answer is, it's a ruling called, whenever you count something, count up until, but don't include. You get it? I say to you, would you please count for me at least $50, but don't include the 50th dollar. Give me 49. You take one, I won't put it in your bag. In other words, when I use the number 50, I don't include the 50. You get it? So the 50 days really means 49, which means 7 weeks, and it corresponds to the jars. You get it? Okay. What is on that 50th week, 50th day? Look what it says. A new meal offering to Hashem, which of course is to start the new holiday. Now, this whole new sacrifice is going to be written over here from verses 17, 18, 19, and 20 is all about the sacrifice that completes the Omer. Take a look now on 21, the bottom of the page. You shall convoke, that means you shall declare on this very day that we just concluded the Omer, there shall be a holy convocation for yourself, another holiday, a holy declaration, right? And you got to tell your boss you can't work. And what your boss tell you? How many holidays do you guys have? Right? Right? That's what they say, right? You shall do no laborious work. What is laborious again? That means you can do cooking, carrying, and touching the fire, right? But it's the holiday, it's not a Shabbat. It's a little less. Shabbat is no work. Holiday is no laborious work, which means you can commit the other three. It is an eternal decree in your dwelling places for all generations, no matter where you live. You live in Israel, you don't live in Israel, don't make a difference. You got to celebrate this holiday called Shavuot. Now, it talks about grains as part of this Omer. Now, we have two other points to the Omer. One, of course, that will count in anticipation to the receiving of the Torah Mount Sinai. The Torah does not talk about it. Doesn't talk about it at all. The only reference to it in the Torah is that 6 days before the Omer was concluded, we arrived at Sinai, and 6 days later we got the Torah. And so we had to figure it out. This spells it out. This says this holiday, which began with the measurement of grain, which counted 50 days, will conclude with Shavuot, which, by the way, happens to be the time of the giving of the Torah and the conclusion of the 50 days of anticipation, of the 40 days of anticipation. That second part about the Torah is not mentioned here at all. It's figured out. That was part of the oral Torah tradition. The idea of saying, I'm not going to spell everything out to you, says Hashem. You got to do some figuring yourself. And you ain't got no math skills, get them. Because that's part of Judaism. Learn how to count and learn how to observe properly. You get it? So, therefore, it says, now to conclude this counting, which has nothing to do with anything except the measurement. Also, we by implication learn has to do with the anticipation of the giving of the Torah. Concludes with the holiday, and it doesn't even say the name of the holiday. It doesn't even say the name of it. You see Shmuel anywhere? Nowhere. Figure it out. And you say, why don't we call the holiday of Torah? That's what God gave Torah Mount Sinai. We don't. What do we call it? Shavuot. Because this agricultural factor here was very important. Yes, there was the giving of the Torah on Shavuot, but that was a one-time deal. Of course, it made with us forever. But that event was a one-time event. Still, I want to do it every year on the right date to get the right vibes. Just like Pesach. But once we moved into Eretz Yisrael, that's how they took on a very important additional factor of our agricultural existence, of the grains and the measurement of the grains, and the thanksgiving to Hashem for those grains, and the harvest, and the heroic farmers who made sure that we all had what to eat. And there was food in Cambridge because of that, right? So we have to have that sense of this was an important part of our national existence. People celebrated this big time. But in celebration of this and recognition of the importance of agriculture and the recognition of how important it is to eat, comes along a new rule. A rule for the poor, a rule for sharing, a rule for giving stuff up, not just money, but particularly the foods themselves. Verse 22. As you are reaping that harvest of your land, do not remove completely the corners of your field as you reap, nor shall you gather the gleanings of your harvest, for the poor it shall be left. I am Hashem your God. So how are we doing this? I'm reaping the field. Now I get to the corner of the field, my machine, whatever it was in those days, I can't get into that corner, you know. So I could maybe try to force it into the corner, or maybe get some guy to help me. You know how any difficulty? I should make that happen. So that you should leave it for the poor. Get it? So all the corners are left. What's a corner in Hebrew? Payah. Correct? Not peanut, payah. You said not peanut, but the law is called payah. But we also know that the rule of corners for men, these rules, of course, are for the corners of their head, right? And the corners of their beard. And you're not permitted, a man is not permitted to cut the corners of his head, and he may trim it, or Hasidim don't trim it at all, but you can make it, let's say, a little less trimming, but it's still got a really thick hair. And the thick hair, nice and starting above the ear. Not his crazy hair, but it's going to take it. Max and Jew taking bush hair. They got stuff from above the hairline, above the ear line, I should say, and go down to the bottom. So we were the original inventors of sideburns. But that's the law. That's it. Now, the corners of your beard. You may cut the corners of your beard, though no one's really sure exactly where those corners are. And so therefore, you may cut them, but you may not. You may not, and you don't have to leave any thick hair if you don't have a beard, but you can't cut it with a blade. It has to be cut with scissors or a machine and so forth. It is forbidden to use a blade on the corners of the beard. So you have to know the difference between the two corners of the head. Can't be cut all, have to stay there. Corners of the beard may be shaved, but it has to be shaved with a trimmer or a shaver, and so the blade can't touch the face. And these are very important rules, by the way, and these rules are specifically expressed through the area of Jewish people resisting idolatrous practice. Look what idol worshippers do. That's a Goyim do. That's a Goyim get dressed. We dress differently. We appear different. And so this is the law of payah. Leave it to the poor. And by the way, the gleanings also means that as you're reaping, let's say, some stuff falls down and got caught by the reaper. That stuff has to be left for the poor as well. Can anyone tell me the name of a great lady? Oh, come on, great man. Come on. Name of a great lady who converted to Judaism, and she found her husband in the fields. And she was poor at the time, and he left those gleanings for the poor. And that's how they met. What a great way to meet them. A romantic story of Ruth and Boaz, right? So we're going to learn about Ruth very shortly. Hold on one second. And we're going to be learning about Ruth because the holiday that's coming up, Shavuot, is also the holiday of Ruth. Why do we celebrate Ruth's life on Shavuot? We celebrate the Omer, the conclusion of the Omer, I understand. We celebrate the giving of the Torah, I understand. We have this great holiday. By the way, how many days is this holiday? What does it become in America? House of Israel? Two. But it's one. It's a one-day deal. And there's no 7 days here, no none of that stuff. So we have this reason for Ruth is because Ruth's great grandson
It's David and
is King David, David Amelech. That's a smart thing in there. And David Amelech was born, and his yahrzeit, he passed away on Shavuot. So we're going to find a whole stuff, interesting stuff that will come together for Shavuot to celebrate and really understand the beauty of this beautiful holiday. It's called the Shenster of Yom Tov. The prettiest of holidays is the holiday of Shavuot. We're going to learn much more about it. But certainly, agriculture plays a large role in it. The Omer plays a large role in it. The Torah plays a role in it. Ruth plays a role in it. But Ruth's also significant in terms of giving the Torah because just like Ruth converted to Judaism, so did the Jewish people on Mount Sinai. We weren't Jewish then. We were a nice group of Hebrews that came from a nice ancestry of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But we had to affirm our relationship with God. We had to become committed to God. That's Shavuot. That's the holiday of harvest. That's the holiday of the acceptance of the Torah. And the two magical words that the Jewish people said at Har Sinai that the Goyim did not, said the Nishma. We will do whatever it says. I don't want to even know what's in it. I'm signing the check undesignated. I don't care what the specific amount is. And I want to completely do what Hashem asks us. And then we'll go and learn. If anyone would ask me, what is perhaps the most demonstrative part of the Shavuot experience, the most thing you can do, like a Seder, let's say on Pesach, would be stay up all night long. Now, most women don't, certainly not if they're married or have children, and so there are programs for women, single women that would like to come to learn. There are programs for that in various communities, but the men generally stay up all night. And staying up all night to learn, you run the problem of how do you say the early morning blessings. And all of you at one time or another pulled off an all-nighter, haven't you? So what do you do in the morning? The early morning blessings. What? How do you say the early morning blessings? They say, bless you, Hashem, for opening my eyes. My eyes open all night. Bless you, Hashem, for standing up all night. How do you say all those stuff? So we're still going to talk about that and find out how to handle that, those interesting blessings. In any event, let's once again conclude with Shavuot and take a quick look at the on 687 on the margin. And what do you see coming up? Anybody? Say it again. Say it, somebody. Rosh Hashanah is right. What do you see after that? Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret. What? Oh, Yom Kippur? Yeah, sorry, we missed Yom Kippur there. How come they didn't put that in? That's very bad. You should have put that in on the margin there, right? Rosh Hashanah. Who wrote this? Who wrote this translation anyway? Man, I'm going to have a complete art scroll over here. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shemini Atzeret. Now, of course, can you tell me the name of two specific holidays that are not mentioned here? I'll give you a hint. They are winter holidays.
No.
Winter holidays. Winter holidays. Now, you're talking about Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the Omer, and that's coming up next few days. Next Thursday. We'll talk about it. But the two winter holidays that are not mentioned in the Torah are Hanukkah and Purim, and why aren't they mentioned in the Torah? Because they're mitzvahs that are bonus. They're rabbinic mitzvahs. I've told you many times that there are 613 mitzvahs of the Torah and 7 extra mitzvahs of the Rabbanan for a total of 620. That's important to learn. These two holidays are 2 of the 7 mitzvahs that are bonus. You're really required to know those 7 mitzvahs that are bonus. The other holidays you want to mention is 2 particular days that are occurring during the Omer. One is Lag BaOmer coming up. Now, Lag BaOmer can only be understood if you know the alphabet. And you have to know the alphabet based upon what I taught you is the numerical value of each letter. What is the numerical value of the word Lamed spelled Lamed Gimel? The numerical value of Lamed. And the numerical value of Gimel. Together? On the 33rd day of the Omer, we have a holiday celebration coming up on Thursday. Actually, Thursday night and Friday. Now, for those of us that haven't been shaving or taking haircuts because of an additional issue of the Omer called the tragic passing years and years later of the students of Rabbi Akiva, which caused in addition to all the other things about the Omer, it caused us to now observe a small, minor experience of mourning, which is expressed through no haircuts and no shaving, and expressed through no weddings, no music, and no parties. All that comes to an end on the 33rd day of the Omer, according to tradition. The 33rd day of the Omer was when the dying stopped. And therefore, it's a big celebration, and many people are getting married on Thursday night. If you know the wedding, you can go. If you don't know, you can crash. Whatever you want to do. I crash all the time. Anyway, at least I make sure there's food when the doors. Look. Anyway, anybody want to get married? The wedding? All right, anyway, no one to get married. Come on. Okay, anyway, if I do find a wedding, I'll let you know. I'll send you an email out. There's a wedding at such a date, I know the date. The date is Thursday night and Friday. But who's getting married? Oh yeah, there was a wedding on Friday. Wait, yeah. It's bad. Friday early, late morning, there's a wedding. Didn't realize that. One of my students who learned with me back in 2007 is getting married in 2022 to 15 years. I mean, she's a wonderful girl. She found a wonderful guy. Listen, it takes sometimes 15 years to get married, you know? I don't wish that anybody. I promise you to do quicker than 15 years. Anyway, so that's Lag Omer. The other important day in the Omer is today. What is today called? Pesach Shem, the second Pesach. What's the concept of the second Pesach? If a person was impure, we talked about it the first night, the Parsha Shem. We talked about impurities, right? So, particularly impurity of coming into contact with a corpse or funeral, whatever it is. If you have that kind of impurity, you cannot bring the sacrifice of Pesach. So you're just locked out. So then the group of people who had this situation occurring to them approached Moshe Rabbeinu. We're going to learn about it in the Parsha in about 3 or 4 weeks. Approached Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Lama Nigara, why do we have to be left out? And we want to be part of Pesach celebration too. It wasn't our doing that we became impure. We had to do this, that, and that, whatever. And Moshe said, I'll ask Hashem what to do. And Moshe came, and Hashem said, a new ruling. It's a Pesach shame. You'll always get a second chance. There's an opportunity for you if you want to get to have another Pesach and to bring the Pesach sacrifice a month later. The new month, of course, after Nisan is Iyar, right? This is the month of Iyar. Today is the 14th of Iyar, which means today is the second Pesach. How much of an impact does it have upon us? How much? Here's what you can do. Find some matzah and eat some matzah. And that's a beautiful recollection. What would I sell? Stop.
It's on all year long.
Find some matzah and eat some matzah today. Wash matzah lechem and eat some matzah. It's a really great thing to do. Well, they get the small matzah, the regular matzah, get the crunchy matzah. Some people, that's why we call Pesach the holiday crunchy. 7 crunchy matzahs. Even so, believe. And you at least have that sense of history that says that in the days when there was a sacrifice and a man was impure and couldn't bring it, and was neglected or unable to participate in Pesach, he got a second chance. which means truthfully, a great lesson. All of us have second chances. That's the beauty of relationship with Hashem. We all get a second chance. We love Hashem, Hashem loves us. And that's the whole relationship, second chance. And that's why today is significant.